I'm from Serbia, and I'm pursuing a master's degree in human rights and humanitarian action in France. In light of this, I will address the absence of human rights considerations in contemporary discussions on Korean reunification, and then draw on the example of the breakup of Yugoslavia to emphasize the importance of toleration and empathy in preserving unity. In preparation of this speech, my first instinct as a student was to look up the words Korean reunification on my university's library portal. While I certainly can't say I went through all 11,000 results, what I did notice is that many titles looked like this. By far the most common term associated with the reunification was the economy. If I were to summarize the key ideas from these articles, South Korea would bear the financial brunt of reunification, and its economy would take a toll in the short run. But in the long run, there would be a return on the investment, and the unified Korea could potentially be among the top 5 world economies in the next 30 years or so. I then decided to turn away from the big words, long paragraphs, and convoluted sentences of the academia and explore what the lay public in the South have to say on the topic by watching interviews on YouTube. Many were resorting to a cost-benefit analysis of a sort, grappling with the question of whether reunification is worth the investment. On the one hand, they were concerned by the increase in taxes and loss of a certain lifestyle and social cohesion. On the other, they acknowledged the benefits of market expansion, access to resources, and having a larger population. Admittedly, some also invoked family reunification as an important factor. This right here is a South Korean cable factory in my parents' hometown in central Serbia. What seems to be a crucial advantage of reunification is that by building such a factory in the north, instead of 8,500 kilometers away, the South could cut on the cost of overseas expansion while still having access to cheap labor. Korean reunification is framed first and foremost as an economic issue. Also not uncommon is the depiction of it as a political or diplomatic one, but it is hardly ever conceived of as a human rights issue. And perhaps I'm biased because human rights, after all, is my main field of interest, but allow me to make my case for why I find this absence concerning. In 2014, the United Nations Commission of Inquiry released its report on human rights in North Korea, and the findings are alarming. While the report is not legally enforceable because the Commission is not a judicial body, it established that crimes committed in the DPRK have met the high threshold of crimes against humanity. According to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, there are 11 constitutive physical elements of crimes against humanity: murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation, unlawful imprisonment, torture, rape, persecution, enforced disappearance, apartheid, and other inhumane acts. All but the crime of apartheid have been perpetrated by the North Korean regime. The idea behind crimes against humanity is that they're so grave and atrocious as to shock the conscience of the entire mankind. The concept is thus meant to transcend the realm of the legal and equally be considered as a moral wrongdoing. But instead of being shocked by the crimes in the DPRK, we're shockingly used to them, to the extent that we perceive them as a given. Therefore, here is my humble attempt at reframing the issue of reunification from a human rights perspective. It is a complex, multifaceted, and undeniably costly process, but at the same time an immense opportunity to ensure that North Koreans start enjoying human rights and dignity that they are entitled to. Another point I wish to make is that in the event of reunification, toleration and empathy are of utmost importance. Charles Taylor, an author I'm particularly fond of, cautions that in order to sustain and prolong any kind of consensus, the necessary conditions are mutual respect and understanding. Now let me evoke an example that hits close to home of how contempt and sense of superiority break the consensus. At the end of World War II, Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia, Bosnia, and Slovenia formed a unified South Slavic sovereign country, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. The 6 constituent republics shared ethnocultural and linguistic similarities. They witnessed the expansion of territory and population, as well as political recognition and economic might. And the narrative sounds familiar, doesn't it? One can recognize the frequently cited benefits of Korean reunification. But it wasn't enough. Nationalism, ethnic hatred, and religious intolerance prevailed over unity in the 1990s and eventually translated into a brutal armed conflict. Ethnic cleansing, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the consequences: permanent breakup of a country, generational trauma, and ever-present tensions in the region. In my third year of studies, my applied ethics professor started a class by pointing out that in our world of today, there is an ever-growing unwillingness to talk about difficult issues that involve personal differences. He said, "We will be discussing topics like religion, abortion, assisted dying, so I want you to learn toleration." It might sound absurd, but it worked exceptionally well, so here are the 5 steps he shared with us. The first is to expect difference. Second, own your convictions, stay true to yourself. Third, make informed arguments. Fourth, be mindful of your own limitations. And lastly, be compassionate. Throughout my research, I observed a certain degree of prejudice and negativity towards North Koreans. It is common knowledge that access to information in North Korea is extremely limited, and it is only natural that we're not at ease with the unfamiliar. But what I encourage us to do is to try and work on our toleration and empathy. If the steps I listed do not appeal to you, here's a personal, non-expert recommendation. Read or watch SKP's testimonies. Each and every one of them is heartbreaking, but they help me move past the abstract. Only then I could put a face on the hardships. Only then did it truly hit me that these distressing stories are someone's reality. That's why I joined PSCORE. Universal human rights might be an idealistic aspiration. Not everyone's willing to display empathy. And it can be frustrating and disheartening, but if there's one thing that I've learned from studying human rights, and I will leave you off with that, is that one needs to replace cynicism with hopefulness and remain perseverant in pursuing their cause. Thank you.